Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war.
Right now at 5, Russia invades Ukraine, and tonight the president says Moscow will suffer the consequences.
Jacqueline Quinn in Cooper City, and Ukrainians and people are coming together to pray after Russia invades Ukraine. You're going to hear more from them just ahead.
The so-called Don't Say Gay bill passes its first obstacle in Florida. What's next for the controversial legislation?
Plus, last call for spring breakers. The changes coming to South Beach following last year's violent hangover. We're live on air and always streaming on CBS News Miami with the CBS News app. Good evening. I'm Lauren Pastrana.
And I'm Elliot Rodriguez. CBS 4 News at 5 starts right now.
This is CBS 4 News at 5.
Now at 5, unsettling sights and sounds in Ukraine. Sirens. And explosions across the country as Russian troops move in.
Make no mistake, it's a war against Ukraine.
Dozens dead, homes damaged, and widespread panic.
What are your immediate plans?
None. Get to the U.S.
Tonight, President Biden reacts.
Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war. And now he and his country will bear the consequences.
As Russia invades Ukraine.
And here's the latest coming into the CBS 4 newsroom. President Biden announced new strong sanctions on Russia. U.S. stocks tumbled after the attack, and so did global stocks. And Ukraine's health minister announced 57 deaths tied to the invasion.
The invasion is getting worldwide condemnation. U.S. defense officials are calling this the initial phase of a full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
We have team coverage tonight. CBS 4's Jacqueline Quinn spoke with people with close ties to Ukraine. But first, we go to Natalie Brand in Washington, D.C. with those latest developments. Natalie?
Began late last night. Elliot?
Natalie Brand, thank you very much for the update from Washington. And right now, let's take a closer look at the timeline of events in Greenwich Mean Time, which is 7 hours ahead of us. 3:59 a.m., the first signs of an invasion, lights go out. 4:50, Putin announces the so-called special military operation, denying plans to occupy Ukrainian territories. Minutes later, at 5:07, the strikes begin. 11:28 a.m., Ukraine's president addresses the nation, comparing Putin to Hitler in World War II. And about an hour later, reports that at least 50 people had been killed, the majority of them soldiers.
For people in South Florida with ties to Ukraine, they're watching in anguish, some turning to prayer.
CBS 4's Jacqueline Quinn continues our team coverage. She's in Cooper City for us. Jacqueline?
Elliot, for some, the anxiety is as if they were there, and for some, it's also for Ukraine, and a number of rallies are planned, two at least today and for this weekend. We'll have more in the next half hour. In Cooper City, I'm Jacqueline Quinn, CBS 4 News.
Jacqueline, thank you. And there's much more coming up on CBS 4 News. In minutes, inflation concerns, how the invasion could impact your wallet. Then at 5:30, a live interview with an FIU strategist on what this all means for us, plus the potential for cyber attacks. And then at 6, South Florida support, how you can help the people in Ukraine and the surrounding areas. CBS 4 is continuing to closely monitor the situation overseas. Stick with us on air and online at cbsmiami.com for the latest developments.
We're following breaking news right now out of Southwest Miami-Dade. A deadly car accident has been reported on Sunset Drive, leading to a closure tonight between 132nd Avenue and Southwest 127th Avenue. A car struck a tree right there, splitting the car in half and killing the driver inside. No word on what led to the crash or who was inside that vehicle. Switching gears now for a check of our weather. We've had a sunny and warm day in South Florida. Temperatures have been higher than normal, but what's in store as we inch closer to the weekend?
That's what we want to know. CBS 4 meteorologist Jennifer Correa joins us now with the forecast. Hey, Jen.
Hey there. So, yes, are we going to cool down? Well, there's a front coming our way, but that could change this weekend.
Jen, thanks a lot. Happening right now, a controversial bill, commonly called the Don't Say Gay bill, passed another hurdle in the legislature in Tallahassee today. CBS 4's Ted Scouten has been following the developments on that bill. Also, the whole controversy over critical race theory. Ted, bring us up to date.
Yeah, Elliot. Both of those bills, Elliot, passed in the Florida House this afternoon. Both of them deal with classroom instruction. Floor, that's where they would have discussion as well as a vote. If it passes in the Senate, then it'd be on to the governor for his signature. Live in Hollywood, Ted Scouten, CBS 4 News.
Okay, Ted, thanks a lot. Alcohol sales on South Beach are being rolled back during the height of spring break. The mayor says that will curb chaos and disorder. Mayor Dan Gelber wants to avoid a repeat of last year's spring break, where large crowds forced the city to impose an 8 p.m. curfew. Sales will now be rolled back from 5 a.m. to 2 a.m. from March 7th through the 21st, and that affects all businesses south of 16th Street.
While we are going to have a 2 a.m. rollback at some point across the city, certainly for this 2 or 3 week period, it's important for us to tone down behavior and not create an all-night party scenario, which has been so difficult for our city over the last many years.
It's not going to make any difference. Young people are still going to get alcohol during spring break.
Well, the mayor says last November voters approved a citywide rollback for alcohol sales to 2 a.m. with some exceptions. Coming up at 6 o'clock, CBS 4's Peter Dench will have much more on the story for us.
Still ahead on CBS 4 News, opposing views tonight from the CDC and Florida's governor. DeSantis releasing new official state guidelines. We'll tell you what they recommend coming up. Health concerns for this aquarium star attraction tonight. The generous offer to help Lolita at 6.
We're following breaking news in Hollywood, where 3 people were just transported to the hospital in what's described as a possible near drowning.
CBS 4's Joan Murray is live on the scene now. And Joan, what are police telling you?
Well, we do not know the condition of those individuals, but police are not saying the condition of the 3 that were transported. We hope to have an update, more information coming up at 6. Reporting live in Hollywood, Joan Murray, CBS 4 News.
Joan, thank you. We continue with our coverage as Russia invades Ukraine. Americans are bracing for the economic impact of the invasion. With inflation already at a 40-year high, we could see even higher prices. CBS 4's Elise Preston has more on how what's happening in Europe could impact your wallet.
American land war since World War II. Elise Preston, CBS News, New York.
These new developments could complicate the decision-making at the Federal Reserve, which has been planning to raise interest rates to control prices. And coming up at 5:30, we'll talk with a local professor and strategist about what else we could see happen as the invasion continues.
We've got some breaking news to report right now. 3 former Minneapolis police officers have been convicted of violating George Floyd's civil rights. Tao, Jay Alexander, King, and Thomas Lane were convicted of all charges against them. All 3 officers were charged with depriving Floyd of his right to medical care when Derek Chauvin pressed his knee into Floyd's neck for 9.5 minutes. Tao and King were also convicted of failing to intervene in Chauvin's actions. Look for much more on the jury's verdict tonight on the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell. That is coming up at 6:30. But right now we want to turn our attention to the weather. We've had a stretch of nice days, but cooler weather is in the forecast, and I kind of like that.
I like the sound of that. Jennifer, what can we expect moving forward? What's in the 7-day?
So later on in the weekend, we do have a cold front coming our way, but I do want to emphasize, and I mean not a washout whatsoever. Then we have a cooler breeze Monday, waking up in the low 60s.
Jennifer, thank you. Miami Proud is celebrating Black History Month. This week, we're shining a light on local author Michael Woodward Jr.
Miami born and raised, this inspiring children's author and educator says his stories are meant to reflect his experiences and to help fill a cultural void on bookshelves everywhere. CBS 4's Candace Gibson caught up with him at a book reading event at George Washington Carver Elementary School.
Full color of the Proud stories, go to cbsmiami.com. In Coral Gables, Candace Gibson, CBS News, Miami.
All right, still ahead, we're live at the South Beach Wine and Food Festival. Say cheers. Our Lisa Petrillo is live with a preview.
CBS 4's Miami Proud is sponsored by FPL. At FPL, we're always planning, preparing, and investing in an energy future Florida can depend on. See how at fpl.com/value. This is CBS 4 News at 5:30.
Russia has launched more than 160 missiles for airstrikes as the country invades Ukraine. Explosions were heard in a number of cities, including Ukraine's capital, Kyiv.
Now, the U.S. has imposed new sanctions against Russia in response to the invasion. World leaders are condemning it, some calling it barbaric. Ukraine's health minister says 57 Ukrainians have died as a result of the invasion. 169 more are hurt. Now, here in the United States, the invasion sent Wall Street reeling before it later recovered. Right now, we want to bring in Professor Alex Crowther with Florida International University. He has experience as a strategist and a political advisor and has served overseas. And Professor, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Today, President Biden announced strong sanctions against Russia. However, that threat has been looming for weeks, if not months at this point, and it didn't change Vladimir Putin's course of action here. Do sanctions alone send a strong enough message? And what other steps could the U.S. ultimately end up taking?
So there's no agreement on whether or not sanctions work alone. There is a body of research now that indicates they don't stop people like Vladimir Putin. After the Minsk sanctions in 2014, Vladimir Putin redesigned the Russian economy to make it less vulnerable to sanctions. And so sanctions aren't going to bother Vladimir Putin, who is rumored to be one of the richest men in the world, or his people, because they've got the entire state of Russia to pillage for their own pocketbook. So they don't, the Russian people are going to suffer, but the Russian oligarchs and Siloviki, the security guys that run the country, aren't going to suffer at all.
Yeah, you say those sanctions won't bother Vladimir Putin, but they could create that anti-war sentiment amongst the people in Russia. But you're saying that won't really be enough to change Putin's course of action here?
Well, you know, this is a tremendous opportunity. That's a great point. It would be wonderful if we could drive a wedge between the Russian people and Vladimir Putin, or even if we could push a wedge between the Siloviki and the oligarchs and Vladimir Putin, because this is really the only way we're going to be able to get rid of him. The Russian people themselves don't have the power to fire Vladimir Putin, unlike, say, here in the United States.
Now, while you're speaking, we're seeing these heartbreaking scenes of Ukrainians just picking up, packing their bags, and coming across the border. One lady saying, you know, I want to go to America. I'm thinking of Casablanca. I'm thinking of World War II, when Europe was disheveled in this way and just turned upside down. We're seeing the impact there. What about the impact in this country? We know about gas prices will go up. We saw the stock market lose and then recover at this point. What other economic impacts could Americans feel because of this invasion?
Well, I think the biggest potential problem is if the Russians start doing cyber attacks here in the United States. For instance, the Capitol Pipeline attack a year ago originated out of Russia. And so if they do something like that, you could see them shutting down. It could be as bad as shutting down banking systems, shutting down air traffic, as we saw with the Capitol Pipeline, shutting down energy flows. They won't be able to sustain that very long, and it will be very targeted, but they could certainly achieve limited effects like that if they really wanted to.
What about people who have family in surrounding countries in that area? Should they be concerned right now? What could they be doing to help them? I know here locally people are starting to gather supplies to send to Ukraine, but what else can people be doing, and how should Americans be responding to what we're seeing overseas right now?
Well, so we've seen over the last couple of years that visas are a big thing, and so it would be very nice to let refugee Ukrainians here into the United States. Interestingly enough, many Ukrainians aren't fleeing. I have colleagues there, and one of my friend's father, who helped me when I was studying Ukrainian history, bought an AK-47 and body armor, and he's at home doing his podcast and waiting for his activation order. So a lot of Ukrainians are staying put. I don't think the other countries are going to have problems that we can help. What's going to happen is all these refugees that you see on the camera right now, they're going to end up in Poland or Romania, and they're going to have a refugee issue.
And your friend with the AK-47 there in Ukraine will be facing the biggest land army in the world. I mean, how far do you think Vladimir Putin is willing to go in Ukraine?
Well, Vladimir Putin, when he talked to the Russian people the other night, said that they were going to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. So their accusations that the Ukrainian government is full of Nazis is obviously ridiculous. As a matter of fact, Zelensky is Jewish. But demilitarization implies dismantling the military. And the military, like any military, is spread out over the entire country. They've got command and control. They've got air defense. They're at airfields and stuff like that. So that would imply that the Russians would keep going until they were able to dismantle the Ukrainian military.
Which could mean taking over the capital of Kyiv and ultimately just taking over the entire nation of Ukraine, which is a big country. Professor Alex Crowther from FIU, thank you very much for joining us. I know you'll be joining us at 7 o'clock, and we'll continue our conversation with you.
And we will continue to follow developments from Russia's invasion of Ukraine on air and online. Coming up at 6, we'll look at the local efforts to provide aid to people getting out of Ukraine.
And still ahead on CBS 4 News, South Beach taking action to avoid a repeat of last year. Tonight, the new plan to limit alcohol sales during spring break, coming up at 6.
Also at 6, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, the Broward School Board hammering out the small print for its new superintendent.
And I'm Lisa Petrillo, live at the South Beach Wine and Food Festival for the 21st year. It is Diners, Drive-In, and Dives Live. Buttermilk chicken right here from Atlanta, Georgia. Whoa, chicken sliders are headed our way. Thank you so much. We have a live report coming up on CBS 4 News.
A lot of events happening, not just tonight, but through the weekend. I'll have that forecast coming up. But as the sun sets tonight at 6:20, just keeping things warm, and also can't rule out some stray drizzles. We'll have your full forecast coming up.
The South Beach Wine and Food Festival kicks off today.
It's a 4-day festival showcasing the world's most renowned wine and spirits producers, chefs, and culinary personalities. CBS 4's Lisa Petrillo is there, lucky girl, with the founder of the festival tonight. Hey, Lisa.
Hi, guys. I am not complaining. 21st year of this wonderful festival. I think I've been back to you guys in the studio. Thank you so much,
We'll
Lee.
take the leftovers.
Those
for
donuts
sure.
were calling my name. Okay, thank you. If there are any leftovers, bring them here.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Have fun. Still ahead on CBS 4 News at 5:30. The list is out of the best beaches in the country. Maybe where Lisa is right now. We'll tell you which destination snagged the top spot and which South Florida beach got snubbed.
And if you are making your way down to Sobe Wine and Food Festival, tonight temperatures will be mainly in the mid and low 70s. Tomorrow's highs, and for the weekend, staying in the low 80s. Rain chances are down to a minimum, except Sunday. Things are changing then. I'll have that forecast for you coming up.
Well, we all know, of course, that Florida is a major beach destination. Now, TripAdvisor is out with the top 25 beaches across the country. And while 9 Florida beaches made the list, one of the most popular destinations, Miami Beach, didn't make the cut. Hapuna Beach State Recreation Area in Hawaii took the top spot. Siesta Beach and Siesta Key was the only Florida beach to make the top 10, coming in at number 2. Pensacola Beach and Henderson Beach State Park in Destin just missed the top 10. As for South Florida beaches, Fort Lauderdale Beach ranked number 18. I demand a recount.
Right? I was going to say,
Come
Miami
on.
Beach is pretty good, especially with the Wine and Food Festival happening this weekend on Miami Beach. Hopefully the weather cooperates for everyone out there tonight. Jennifer?
It will. As far as the rain chance goes, it's very slim. There were hand-serve event. There's the walk and the ride. We're keeping things mainly dry throughout the morning.
Jennifer, thank you. Good to hear for you.
Yes.
It's going to be out there riding bike. All right, still ahead on CBS 4 News at 5:30. The death of Trayvon Martin 10 years later. Tonight, a personal conversation with Trayvon's dad. What he told CBS 4's Jim Barry about turning his pain into a lifelong purpose. Next.
I'm Peter Dench on South Beach, where they're going to be limiting the hours that alcohol can be sold at businesses during the height of spring break.
We know that this area of our city in South Beach is the hardest area to police. And so we have to make a decision based on that.
We'll hear from the mayor and tourists as well in our story coming up.